this leads into my next question about meme or pop astrology.
Pop astrology, I think it has its place. Like there some sun sign astrology can be done really powerfully if done rigorously, as rigorous as one can be. As astrology continues to grow and expand and reach out to more people, so will pop astrology. It's just like if you're making a meal, you're gonna have scraps and things you're gonna have to deal with. So
Yeah,
it can either be in the landfill, or it can be in or you can compost it
it's a
somehow.
natural byproduct of.
Yeah, it's a natural byproduct. So like I'm fine with it. And it's fun to it's sometimes it's fun to have to like make jokes about that and everything. Like it's fun. It's we can't always all be serious. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, no, like I'm at peace with it. I just like roll my eyes. Like my favorite is when I have someone who is very I get customers who are very into pop astrology, and then they try to have a conversation with me, and then yeah, it's just really funny. Like they're just yeah, I'm just being nice, saying they're listening and everything. But like this one person was just like I don't trust Geminis. I don't trust Geminis, and and so I just asked this person, like, why is that?
Mm,
Do you know what, like, how do you define Gemini?
mm. Yeah, let's look into that a little more.
Yeah, like, how do you define Gemini? And
Mm,
then and then usually the conversation stops there, and then they just like list out like characters, and then I ask, like, are you sure that's just not people individuals who happen to have Gemini placements, maybe? But that never gets to that point. Hobbies, like, you enjoy the practice, making a career, you're monetizing it,
right. Yeah, that's
and
the
not
sad
everything
part.
needs to be monetized.
Yeah, and sometimes it can ruin it.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
I tried to monetize my. I was doing a little bit of photography, and then I tried to monetize that, and that basically robbed all the joy of it. And I never want to touch a camera ever again now.
What do you think is the biggest misconception?
Oh, I mean, that really depends on which crowd we're talking about. So for those who are interested in astrology, who aren't rigorous with it, the biggest misconception is that, like, no, it's not. Stop focusing on the signs. Focus
Right. Yes.
focus on the planets. They're all just models. Everything is a model. Like, we have to remember that. Like the thema mundi, even though it is a very powerful model, it's still a model. Looking at what tropical versus sidereal, they're both just models from a geocentric perspective. Like, so that allows things to that means that, like, multiple things can be true and multiple things can work.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, and then I also my biggest gripe is people relating Pluto with transformation. What in the chart isn't transformative?
Yeah.
Like, it's not a very good word, because it's like almost everything can be transformative.
Yeah.
Um,
It's very like nondescript.
it's lazy. Karmic points, because
Yeah.
karmic point is, again, this one thing. It's just like, in my opinion, there's things that astrology can describe, and there's things astrology cannot describe. Karma is like sort of like the mechanism of reality. That's So the entire chart is karmic. So when I see, like, kind of like that word being thrown around, I do roll my eyes.
What are some ways that you see astrologers misusing and abusing the practice?
They approach astrology thinking that it's not a rigorous practice that requires, like, dedication. So then they abuse the system to sort of to extract as much as they can from sort of like the cultural phenomenon right now, just like the sort of like the resurgence of astrology. So that's one way.
Mhm.
And then also, I see the astrologers using it wrong, as in, like, they're trying to use astrology to have power over things,
Mm.
which is like, I think it's just like, that's interesting. It's like, I vaguely tried that, vaguely, yeah, earlier in my practice, and it was just like, no, this doesn't even work like this. This doesn't even feel right doing it this
Like,
way.
what's an example of
It's
that?
just kind of like, trying to like get people's charts, so I have like having inside information.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't really, luckily I don't really know anyone that does that. But it's like and it's like when I learn now, it's like when I learn about someone's chart, it's more of like I get to see both of those things side by side, and becomes more of like a scientific thing, like an observation, like, oh, that's how that manifests.
Yes.
And then also just like one of the reasons that, you know, I no longer share my chart is because there are sharing your chart out into the internet is can be pretty can be a perilous thing, just because there's a with magic
Hmm.
it should be practiced in a very like sort of like a selfless type of way. Like it's sort of like, no, I want to exist better. I
Hmm.
want to do what it is I'm meant to do better and more deliberately. But a lot of people will turn to magic because they feel disenfranchised, disempowered. So they use magic to do. Josephine puts this like really like wonderful, and probably will quote it terribly, but it's like, you know, using magic to do the things that the personality fails to do. There's a lot of folks that are just like unwell who are now practicing magic, and that can be very dangerous. And if someone's a skilled enough magician and they have your chart, they can cause some pretty like they can cause some damage to your life. So that's another way that's sort of like that's just being misused as
Hmm.
well. Or not even just like influencing other people, but it's like specifically just doing it for literally like these very like self-centered, vain and destructive and spiteful reasons.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but also I also think that another way astrology is being misused is that thinking astrology is an answer, is a cure-all,
Mm.
which is like that's sort of like the opposite problem. It's like, you know, just astrologizing everything.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Taking it too far.
Yeah. And I hate that that's a thing, because, you know, I want to share my chart, plaster it all over. But it's like if especially, and maybe not so much if like one isn't like kind of within those like magical communities, but especially if one's in the magical communities. Also, you know, for example, taking pictures of one's altar is
Oh,
not all,
yeah.
because a skilled magician can then suddenly access your space.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate, but there's just trolls. It's the same thing as you wouldn't put your credit card information out there. And then I guess it's the Saturnian thing where it's just like, well, you put out some very sensitive information, so we're just gonna show you what happens when you do that.
As far as what like an ideal vision of the future with astrology, what would you like to see in the future as far as like society embracing it, and what's your ideal vision?
I would really love to see more access to like just like more attention being paid to like mental health and everything. Because like, you know, I have this conversation with you and Jessica a lot, which is like they're giving readings, whereas I tell them that I'm both holding space and giving a reading.
Hmm.
And, you know, of course, it's like as astrologers, our function is to read their chart, to delineate their chart. Yet, because of like the current circumstances, that just like the general distrust in sort of like healthcare institutions and everything, a lot of people are turning to alternative like modalities to get their therapeutic needs. So it's like we have that role now. So it's like I would love to see more. I would love to see more connection with sort of like being trauma informed, having just like just like bringing that into counseling skills, space holding skills, to bring those into it, like for the fact that that is the circumstance we're in. And you know, people. I know there's those who disagree with me, but it's like and that's just what I see. And maybe that's just the kind of clients I get. But it's like, yeah, people come to me like they want a reading, but it's like what really what they really want is they want something to challenge the context that they have framed their life in.
Hmm.
They want a context that is actually like supportive, that is actually
Yeah.
that is like is responsive to them. And that's typically like, you know, and this I've said this before, like I think, you know, for example, one of Jupiter's like graces is that Jupiter can purify and sanctify anything. And Jupiter is in the realm of like sort of the heavens, so it's like it's the narrative, it's the context. And like yeah, it's like it's just like sort of like, I think it's just sort of like understanding that. And I think as when we do that, we can just serve as astrologers better. I think that's like all I want, is just like I'm not too concerned about like the standing in the society being accepted by academia. But that's me. That's not my focus. And maybe it's just because I've always sort of just been like the odd one out. Not that I've wanted to ever be the odd one out. I've always wanted to fit in. I just literally don't know how to. So it's like, it's more of just like, I just want ideally for just kind of like the general population of astrologers to just like to just be a little, to bring that perspective, and to just see like, and to know, and to be able to just like serve people better, so we're not getting folks looking for turning to astrology, then being traumatized by just terrible astrologers. And I also, and maybe that's just a hot take, but I really ideally want astrology to really separate itself from new agey stuff, the new agey like mentalities. I want astrology to be sort of like spearheading the revival of like the ancient esoteric traditions.
I agree.
And to combat this sort of just this new agey.
They can get really conflated, and it just turns into something that it's not, and it's just pretty frustrating.
It's like, and it's just really bad. Well, like with new agey, like the new agey mentality, there's no just everything is everything, nothing is nothing. There's no discernment, so anything can be conflated into new agey. Unfortunately, new agey mentality tends to be informed by privilege. It serves one's comfort. It's that's why it's like so much new age mentality, and like ideas and everything. It's very dualistic, and it's also very it's just full of like, it's in a veneer of like just bypass.
Like good vibes only type stuff.
It's like it's a different language, but it's the same thing.
Predetermination and free will, do they work together, or are they mutually exclusive?
Well, so free will is a funny thing. I think particularly the Western part of the world is obsessed with this idea of free will, of individual. It is because it's very individualistic. So it's like, when I say determinism, what I mean is like, it's like, we're at point A, we're moving to point B. What that doesn't mean is that there is an architect micromanaging every single action.
Yes.
Because everything in between matters. Like because the universe is infinite, there's an infinite ways of getting to point B. But you still end up at point B. Now, like, whether it's like, when you're at point B, it's like, if we're talking about thoughts, is your B in Comic Sans, or is it in Times New Roman? Is your, like, if let's say it's this might horrify some vegetarians, but like, if it's, let's say B is a steak, are you going to be eating a well done steak, or are you going to be eating like a beautiful medium rare steak? It's like, but it matters, like, but the outcome happens, and that's where like sort of like the magical part, the deliberate engagement comes in. But the free will part is more of like the variance of being able to decide how one gets to point B, sort of a thing. But in terms of literally free will, no, I don't think we actually have free will. Because to me, to have free will is to almost have no impetus. It would mean that we would basically be inanimate objects. To me, I define free will as there is nothing. There's nothing is having will that is not influenced or compelled by any external things or circumstances.
Yeah, which means that you live in a vacuum and nothing affects you, which is not true.
It's not black and white. It's not either you have free will or you don't. So it's like, but if we're talking purely what I think purely free will is like that would be that statement. It's like being completely absent of any motivating, compelling factors that are outside of one's own volition, which I just don't think is true. Like even just down to our body,
Yes.
our body compels us, you
Yes.
know?
We don't have control of a lot of things.
Yeah, we're emanations of God. That compels us. Like something is always compelling us, and that's not a bad thing.
Reincarnation, past lives.
I do think reincarnation is definitely a thing, but I don't think it's in the way that a lot of people think. I think it's more subtle and nuanced than that. But I don't particularly know exactly how to articulate that. I don't think we're gonna reincarnate as a tree based off of our actions. I think it's more of like the reincarnation, the way that we return into some sort of existence is like a result of our actions. And then that might not even be us like existing as an autonomous thing, but sort of like we then influence the fate pattern of someone else. So it's like, yeah, yes to reincarnation. I don't know if there's really such a thing as a past, because that's past, future, present or is the way that the human mind can perceive time.
Yeah.
It's very linear, but it seems that in the universe, in the ultimate nature of reality, things get much less linear. Yeah, so that's why I'm like, I don't know if I would say call it past lives. But it's like you know, there's like influences from other timelines.
Do we choose our own birth charts?
Oh, this is interesting. I don't know how to answer this, because then that means that
that would mean we choose our hardships.
Yeah, I am like, I don't know.
That's the hard part about this question.
Okay, so in a sense, yes, because I do believe in fate patterns, but I don't think it's that we choose it. I think it's that that's sort of like what just happens. It's like it's sort of the way that there's like, I really believe that there's just these patterns that are just like constructed the universe and over and over and over again, and then our life fulfills a specific role within the unfolding of that pattern. So I think that saying that we choose our charts is, I wouldn't say that, but I do think that we were placed to be intimate with that particular fate pattern because it serves a function in the greater scheme of things. It was not my soul deciding, oh, I'm going to wait until there's this beautiful exalted moon, have it go into Gemini, into this weird aversion and just like this mutable mess, then I'm going to spawn. I'd like to think my soul is thought about things a little bit more than that, or maybe not though, because I mean, yeah. So that's what I think. I think that's the wrong verbiage. Like we choose our own charts. I think it's more of like our charts and our lives perform a very specific role in the greater unfolding.
Science, art, philosophy.
I would definitely say a science and a philosophy. I wouldn't say art. The art's purpose to me is art is art for art's sake. Now you can tie astrology into art. You can do art with astrological sensibilities, but to say that astrology is art, it's not something I would define it as. I feel like being an astrologer is almost more of like a trade. It's like it's a set of skills.
Totally.
And it ends up becoming philosophy, because when one is looking at sort of the nature of their reality or the nature of like other people's realities from this sort of like very far off view, it's like then those natural questions kind of like come up. So it's like, and you know, astrology's function is to be a system of understanding and articulating reality. So that's, to me, astrology's purpose. Whereas art, I find, at least for the way I define it, and I could be completely wrong, is that art generally, I find, is that art is art for art's sake. The art doesn't need a sake, art doesn't need a purpose, whereas astrology is a very specific function.
I think when I was a baby astrologer, I didn't really have like a sense of philosophy yet. And so I was just learning like facts about it, and it was very hollow. And once you get more depth of knowledge, then you start to realize what you actually believe. Because there's a lot of confronting subjects that you may not have ever thought of that come into play when you start learning about these things.
Yeah, because I mean because astrology naturally has that effect, which is why I think it's so powerful. And like Richard Tarnas mentions this all the time. Like astrology is sort of the solution to the Western like mentality, which sees the universe as this empty, hollow place that is simply a result of our psychological projections. Whereas everything there is no meaning. It's very like nihilistic or absurdist if you're like, yay, life has no meaning. But studying astrology and then just like learning these things, astrology contradicts that. It's like, oh, this ball that's just this ball space rock circling up above in orbit is by the Western mentality should have no effect on my life. Yet here I'm presented with data that contradicts that. Having so many clients with like with sun stuff and Leo placements, it's like I'm actually learning the power of perception. Perception is so powerful. Like astrology is primarily is from a geocentric perspective, meaning like it's from down earth. That means it's uniquely just our perception. And I find it, and now I just see it so beautiful. Like I just think about in times of antiquity, like the people just like looking out to the skies and crying out to God, like, what does this all mean? And then through contact, God responded, and then the system of astrology started to develop. Like, but it's purely from from this human perception. So it's just like, and I think that gives it power. I think that's so powerful and that's so like important. It keeps contradicting my preconceived notions of reality, and that was exactly what I wanted. I wanted something to tell me that no, God is not dead. And then the next magical thing about astrology is then astrology gives language to what we thought we could not articulate.
Yes.
However, I do want to say though that there are some folks who tie certain things to like the chart, like for example, like the soul and God and all these things. It's like, I think astrology is such a rigorous and just such a beautiful and complex like system, but I also think that we have to accept that there are some things astrology cannot describe. Like astrology cannot describe one's attitude towards their experience. Astrology, the natal chart, the horoscope, does not give you context. And so like we're the ones who decide, am I looking at a person? Am I looking at a time that I should eat a sandwich? Am I looking at a relationship? Am I asking a question? Like it's our perceptions, our context that breathes life into it. So it's like there are certain things that's like, for example, like God, the soul, these things I think we can get hints, but I personally don't think that astrology articulates those things. And I think that that's perfectly fine, because not everything needs to be articulated, or at least not articulated within the system. We have to know, when we know the limitations of a system, then we know exactly what the system can do.
I think it's beautiful though, because we're not supposed to know certain things. So we can only understand from where we are now, and that's limiting, and we can't perceive what, like your birth chart is you, but you haven't grown into that yet. So you can't see it from that context yet. So you're always missing something, and it's just like an endless journey, and that develops. And when you're finally like super old and you look at your birth chart and you look back on your life and you're like, wow, like I have a lot different view of what I thought it was at the time when I was learning, you know?
And astrology just continues to just astound me with its like efficaciousness. Like, recently gave a reading to a client who basically who's like in their 80s. They're past 84, so they're in their Uranus return.
Mm,
And even then, even though they basically have lived their natal promise, we were still able to find points where it was a new perspective,
mhm.
and we made, and like being able to make an authentic connection with this person who I've never met, who just like all I've got is a chart, and it's
That's
like
awesome.
that's powerful. I have a friend in San Diego who's a practicing astrologer. Her name's Caitlin Goer, and one of the things that she has taught me, which has been so important, is that there's more people than just like within our own little community. Like, just because one doesn't have the follower count
Mhm.
is not indicative of the quality of their astrology.
Right.
My friend Caitlin, as she's doing a lot of work here uh, in San Diego, um, but you wouldn't really know that looking at her like social media,
Mhm.
and it's really like refreshing. It's really validating that it's like mm, and that's something I wish I could have a little bit more of, but primarily like all my clients are all far away.
Yeah, I think it just depends on where you end up focusing your energy, whether
Yeah.
that's on social media or in the real world. It's and also your resources available to you.
And there's a much wider world than just our own little like
Yeah.
community, which I really think basically started like, it seemed like everybody joined Twitter around the same time, which is like 2018, 2019.
Yeah, I that's when I started my first account was 2018. I
Yeah,
have since deleted it and made a new one, but yeah, that was when I
I,
started.
I I think it was Jupiter and Sagittarius then.
Oh, perhaps.
Yeah, like it's just really fascinating. Like all of
That's funny.
like you, all of like my other like of my astro friends and colleagues were like a lot of them have joined around that time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's definitely a wave that came in at that
yeah.
point.
Mhm.
Very interesting.
It's basically how I want to live my life now. Once I've got the joy of like talking to another astrologer, I'm just like, I don't want to have conversations with other people now.
It gets lonely at times when you're just like you have all this like in your head and you don't have the right people to talk about it with, and finding your community is so important. So I mean, I think that's one reason why I wanted to do this type of things, because I wanted to like reach out and get to know people better, and share that with others so that they can feel seen, and they can kind of know what's out there. Do you plan to go to any conferences?
I'm gonna be going to Norwalk.
Ooh, yes.
I,
I haven't pulled the trigger, but I'm thinking about it. So
yeah, I bought my registration before I had time to doubt it. I was just like,
that's probably smart. Yeah, I probably need to do the same because it's just, you know.
yeah.
But
I
anyway,
think I think it's still in the second tier of like the pricing before it gets more expensive. Like
yeah,
I
there's
think
still
Mar
time.
I
I was
think
looking at
Mar
the price and it was like, even if I waited to the last minute, it's not that bad. So
no, yeah, it's not that bad, but it's like it's more like the other expenses that then make it kind of add up.
yeah,
But
the hotel or where you're staying and the plane ticket and
yeah,
everything. So
I grew up in Washington though, so like I have like friends there, so I can mitigate that part.
oh, that's lucky. Yeah, I plan to go to ESAR, which is going to be
Mm.
in Denver, in like Denver area, and that's where I lived for so long. And so I feel like if I don't go to the other one, I want to at least go to that one because it'll feel like a full circle moment. Because I actually went to the Mercury Cafe to attend a live recording
Love
of the astrology podcast with Chris Brennan, and I talked to him briefly, and it felt like a big celebrity moment. And I just kind of want to show up and meet my people, because it does feel very lonely.
I think I remember hearing that I don't think Chris Brennan's like actually gonna be doing any talks there, so he's just gonna go there to just like hang out. He was like
Oh, cool.
he's trying to get Austin to come down as well so they have drinks. So you should go hang out with them.
Oh, I want to. I just, yeah, it's gonna be weird to like figure out how to weasel my way in, without just feeling like a big fangirl or whatever. But it's gonna be, I think that's like the next level to my, involvement, and it's exciting.
Yeah, I can't wait to I'm gonna have to try really hard not to fanboy Austin when I finally get to meet him.
Yeah, just talk to him like a regular person, but until you're there, you don't know if it's even possible to do that. So
I will be slathering myself in Regulus materia beforehand and solar materia. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.